Waka and welcome to the state I'm in, where every conversation points north. Here, we discuss the topics that Alaskans and perhaps everyone may care about. I'm your host, Manny Coelho, a fellow Alaskan and your guide to the conversations that Alaskans want to hear from the individuals who are leading the way. My guest today is Nikki Corbett. If you've spent any amount of time on Alaska's social media, the chances are you've probably come across the creativity, humor, and indigenous pride that shines through So Yupik and the artist behind it all, Nikki Corbett. Nikki grew up in Bethel, Alaska, and currently resides on the Kenai Peninsula. Her story starts off in a way that is anything but easy. From a childhood shaped by trauma and resilience to finding healing and identity through Yupik culture, language, and traditional art, she has built something truly unique. You might know Nikki as a content creator, but from what I've learned in this conversation, she is so much more than that. She's a working artist who keeps traditional skills alive, making kuspuks, fur hats, mukluks, and so many other handcrafted pieces using materials like sealskin, otter, beaver, and even fish skin. What started off as her own journey to reconnect with her culture has grown into So Yupik, a platform where she shares her creations, lifestyle, and teaches workshops across Alaska and beyond, helping others learn the same skills she worked so hard to reclaim. Her classes have taken her from small rural villages to universities to Whitehorse, Seattle, and even Greenland, sharing Indigenous art in a way that is accessible, practical, and deeply meaningful. In this conversation, we talk about her experience growing up in rural Alaska, navigating past family traumas, rediscovering culture as an adult, and the importance of language and art, and how a simple decision to just start sewing has turned into a movement that's inspiring people around the world. Personally, I'm very thankful to have had the opportunity to sit down with Nikki because behind every stitch is a story of family, of healing, of resilience, of culture, and I'm just thankful she trusted me to help share those stories with all of you. And now, my conversation with Nikki Corbett. I'm excited we finally got a chance to do this. The first video that I saw, the way Facebook works, right? I wasn't even following So Yupik at the time. I'm just scrolling through my Facebook and I saw the Guyana Chuck Norris video. And the whole thing made me laugh, just because your approach to Yupik culture and sharing that with others, and then I started following all the other stuff that you were doing and then actually learning some stuff along the way. And I thought that's what is pretty cool about what you're doing is you're not just like talking about Yupik culture, but you're sharing it in a way that's funny, relevant by the ways that you're doing it on social media and TikTok. Like you're using all the platforms available out there to share it. And then the amazing stuff that you make and the kuspuks and the hats and all the furs and then the more I learned I was like, holy crap, like you're doing a lot. It's like for me on the outside it looks like a full-time job. So um yeah, I'm really happy that we were able to do this, and I'm excited just to learn more about you and how So Yupik started, and just if this is what you thought this would become, or if you had no idea. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's fun. You can see I've got my furs in the back here, so I've got some
Yep,
stuff I've gotta do,
totally.
and I've been sewing a lot, and, yeah, it's Christmas break now, so usually the sewing and things that I can do are not as, I don't have, like, a time set because my time
Mm,
is what the kids want me to do, so usually if I'm doing something they've been pretty good about playing, like, we're trying to raise kids to just play. You know
mm,
how kids used to just play.
yeah. Yeah. Go outside.
Go outside and just play. You'd play until you were hungry, and nobody made sure you had a coat on, and nobody made sure you had a hat or gloves, like, you just got yourself ready and you went to go play. So, obviously, we don't do that now, but, we're trying to raise a generation of kids that can play, so
Yeah.
With that being said, my sewing and all of the other stuff is limited to when they're either sleeping or they're playing.
Which makes it even more impressive. I mean, if someone that's listening and knows you, watches your stuff on social media, Facebook, TikTok, or whatever. Um, yeah, like I said, you're busy, and the fact that you do that around raising kids is even more impressive. But I do want to find out just your story of growing up here in Alaska. Everyone's story kind of starts a little bit differently, and I'm interested to know where you grew up and like what daily life looked like for you growing up in Alaska.
Well, first, I'm going to start off by introducing myself in our culture. So, Waka, Kulakawa, Mamdrisik Miungunga, Dagom Kenai Peninsula, Ami, Widalachdoa, Anaka, Kakvagalga, Nuna, Bajor Miu Ataka, Dana Santaski, Mishkinami, Ubayam Nagusham Shu, Dudhakanga, Nuna, Bajor, Nek Louis, Irene Shu, Asantaski, Mishkinami, Yupigo Polish Amishu. So in our Yupik culture, the way that we introduce ourselves is by our Yupik name. So my Yupik name is Kulukak. I'm named after my Appa's first cousin from Guinachak. Um, and then it's customary that we also introduce who our parents are, where our
Okay.
parents are from, and then our maternal and paternal grandparents and where they are from. And then we just add the, like, Yupiugo, which is, like, I am Yupik, and then I'm also Polish too. So
Okay.
in the government standards, I'm 50-50, but we don't go based off of those. We just say I'm Yupik and I'm Polish. So, but
Mm,
with the government introduction of blood quantum, some people will say I'm 50-50 or I'm half and
okay.
half. So that's how we introduce ourselves. And usually when you introduce yourself, like growing up, I grew up in Bethel.
Okay.
And so when we would travel, people would always be like, "Get do's it." Like, "Who are you?" And you'd say your name, and then they'd be like, in Yupik, they'd say, "Who's your mom?" Or like, "Who's your mom and dad?" And you would tell them, and they'd be like, "Oh, I'm your auntie." Or they'd be like, "I'm your cousin." And then you'd like be introduced to all these people, and they'd be like, "Then you have a family in this village that you went to go play basketball or something."
Mm,
And so and then also, of course, we joke and say you always want to introduce yourself because you don't want to date your cousin. You want to
yeah.
be like, this is not
Yeah.
your third or fourth cousin. Because
Yeah.
in our culture, my mom's siblings, all of their kids are my brothers and sisters. So they're not first cousins. We're brothers and sisters.
I
And then
see.
their kids are nieces and nephews. And then we branch out to first cousins. And my
Okay.
grandmother's siblings are all my grandparents. So, like, we have a lot of grandparents on both sides. Uh,
Interesting. I didn't know that.
yeah, so our family systems are um, they're so, like, I don't know, they're just so elaborate. Like, it's
Hmm.
not like, "All right, you're my first cousin, you're my second cousin." It's like, no, we have specific cousins where it's like, we have a teasing cousin that would be my other grandmother's kids here.
Mm,
We would have a specific teasing cousin. So, like, you could only
interesting.
tease between those 2.
Yeah. The
Um,
introduction that you gave, is that like a formal introduction? Like if you were meeting, I don't someone for the first time or
in our culture, if you're meeting someone who's Yupik.
gotcha.
So,
Cool.
but you wouldn't say that whole thing. You would just,
I
you'd
see.
say like, "Baka, kakavagala banna," or like I would say my mom's name, and then like banna is like I am her daughter. And so
Hmm.
then be like, "Oh," or you would say like, "Upayam dutakanga," like upayak, my appa, I am his granddaughter. And so then they would be like, "Oh, I was your appa's second cousin. I'm your
Gotcha.
uncle."
Introducing yourself is like an immediate connection between your heritage, your family, like right off the bat. It's this is
No.
who I am and this is who I'm connected to. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, but when they ask you, it's not ever who you are, you're connected through your family. So it's
Mm,
like your intros are when you're introducing yourself, they don't know you by who you are, but they might know your mom or your grandparents, and then, then they'll share a story. And so usually, like, sometimes when I would be traveling, I would go up to someone and I'd be like, "Hi, waka, you remember me?" And they're like, "No." And then I'd tell them who I am and they'd be like, "Oh, Gassayukshuten." They would be like, "I thought you were Gussak," because I am a light-skinned Yupik. So, like, a
Yeah.
lot of when I'm home or when I'm in my home region, I look light-skinned. When I'm out of my home region, I look native. So,
Mm.
like, there was the in between, like, it's like walking between 2 worlds. Um,
Hmm.
but I grew up in Bethel. It was a small town. Um, there's no roads in, so you can drive around. You can only drive in a circle. Like when you could drive the loop in the wintertime, you can drive on the Kuskokwim River up and down the river. So you can go down to my mom's home village, which is Ninapichuk. You can go
Mm.
fishing at you can go fishing ice river or on the river. Um, and you can drive up the river and, and I grew up how do I put this? It was very chaotic. I'll put it
Mm.
that way. It was very chaotic.
Okay.
My mom struggled with addiction and alcoholism, and, when when she was under the influence, she struggled, and so she wasn't very kind. And I took a lot of that. So,
Mm.
like, my earliest traumatic memories were, like, when I was 3, and it just continued until, I had to put a restraining order on my mom. Well, I shared a story. I had to put a restraining order my first one when I was 18, I was in high school.
Mm.
Um, I was just got done working lunch break shift. I worked my lunch break, and then, I went to go to work on the job training, so I went to my second job after I worked lunch, and in between that, I was going to fill out a restraining order paperwork. Um, and so that's how I kinda learned how
Mm.
protective orders work and all that kinda stuff, and so
Yeah.
it was really kind of just my mom, I don't know, for whatever reason, just when she just couldn't leave us alone. And so, unfortunately, like a lot of the anger and brunt and like, just all of that it was a lot of it was directed at me and my other parent. And like starting at a young age,
Yeah.
like 9 or 10, I think I started writing in my journal, just like but I recognized that she wasn't very healthy, like, as a 4-year-old. I looked at her and I was
Yeah.
like, "Hey, you're not healthy. I can't trust you." Um, and, she didn't really live with us. She was kind of in and out. Yeah, so it was a lot of just chaos. I had to, she stopped kind of, you know, bothering me when I had to put the restraining order on her when I was 25. And so, um, and she passed suddenly last year in a house fire.
Mhm.
Um, and
Sorry.
so I had been in my mom's home village a couple years ago and I had seen her and, like there was no animosity. There was nothing like that. I had forgiven her and forgiven myself for the behaviors that I created, like my own coping mechanisms that I developed, which were negative. And so it was Bethel was a nice town to grow up in but sometimes it was, we were not, we knew the cops and we knew them and they knew us and so
Mm.
we'd have to call them quite a bit and so sometimes we'd be dealing with my mom on a school night and then I'd have to get up the next day and I'd have basketball practice at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m.
Mm.
And so it was like that was just a normal thing in our household, and so it was like that quite a bit. Um, so my safe spaces were obviously at school. I felt safe at school, and I had an aunt who kinda took me under her wing as her own kid. And so but, you cling to your friends and, we
Yeah.
don't talk about anything, but you just kind of cling to your friends lean on each other. And, my teachers kind of knew what was going on. And even though like things were crazy, I was still a straight A student and I worked two jobs and I played sports and I would go shopping on Sunday for groceries for the week. And it was, you just have to do what you have to do. And
Wow.
yeah, so I think it was crazy. But you know everyone in this town, so you grow up
Mhm.
knowing everybody, and it's kind of somewhat safe, I think, because you know everybody sort of thing. So
Yeah. So your aunt was, would you say that your aunt was like a big influence on your life? Did you gravitate towards this aunt specifically because you saw something in her that maybe you didn't see in your mom? You mentioned, being just a small child, you kind of realized that, she was unhealthy. And did you find people in your life that were like, I don't know, that you wanted to emulate after? Yeah.
yeah, so my aunt she just took me under her wing,
Mm,
and I think she'd kinda seen what was going on, and so she just took me under her wing and just kinda raised me like her own. And so she would bring me to fish camp. So I'd go to fish camp as a kid with her, and I would spend all summer with her. We would live up there, come down for, I don't know, change of clothes or maybe take a shower or whatever, and then we would go back up to fish camp. And so I would be up there with her helping. I cut one fish, but when I was a kid, the king salmon were so huge, you'd walk up
mm,
and they're as tall as you are. So it was like I cut one and that was my last one. So I was always the fish cleaner and the gut dumper, and like I would help, just whatever, holding the strips in the bucket for the timer and then pulling them out, and then, I
yeah.
would be helping. And so she took me on trips too. She brought me to San Francisco when I was young and San
Cool.
Diego. So I got to travel with her, and she just kind of took me under her wing, and she was like my mom. And she passed when in 95 I was 9, or 96 she might have been 10. I might have been 10. So when I was 10, she suddenly passed. And there was people in my life that, a lot of my friends' parents I gravitated towards, especially their moms. I think they kind of knew what was going on, so they would, like try to be a positive role model for me. But it's just when you have a parent who's supposed to protect you and they're supposed
Mhm.
to love you and fill your cup with love and kindness, and you don't have that. You're just kind of somewhat lost. I mean,
Mm,
I was very stoic, so I was just kind of pretended like everything was okay. When deep down I was just this angry kid. I started chewing tobacco at 16. We had a friend who had passed by suicide, and so we all started chewing, and that was sort of my coping mechanism.
mm.
Um, and Lincoln Park.
Did you say in Lincoln Park?
And Lincoln
Like,
Park. Yeah,
man?
chewing tobacco in Lincoln Park. So that was like
Yeah,
and then of course, you're a kid, you gravitate towards really negative things like, drinking, and like I
yeah.
don't condone that behavior, but I was so lost and I just was trying to just lose myself and whatever.
Mm,
And yeah, I look back and I just think, there was a shame for a long time, but then I recognized like, I was in survival mode
mm,
and I was trying to figure out a way to just like numb the pain.
yeah.
Um, so I don't drink anymore and I don't chew tobacco and I
Yeah.
don't do any of that. Lincoln Park is still there. It's a good coping skill. But yeah, I don't know.
Mm,
It was and I didn't grow up sewing. I didn't grow up doing
mm.
any of this stuff.
Okay,
I
interesting.
didn't
I was
grow
gonna
up
ask about that.
I didn't grow up speaking my language. My mom was the Yupik one, so there
Mm,
was no Yupik in the house.
okay.
As a kid, my goal was to have a native freezer. Like that was my goal. I was like, I want a native freezer. I want like native food in my freezer. And now I have three, which I feel so rich. But it's like it's funny when you're a kid and you're just like, I just want native food in the freezer.
Mm,
Um, But I didn't grow up any of this. My first hat I made when I was in kindergarten. I had Yupik teachers, my incredible Yupik teachers. We had a whole class, and they taught kindergarten kids how to make a fur hat.
That's awesome. That is so
So
cool.
I learned Yupik in school and it was very like, like it was very minimal. Like it wasn't a whole lot. Now they have the Yupik immersion programs, which is incredible. But my friend's mom told me, she was like, "Do you remember when you were in elementary school? You went to the student board and you were like, we want more Yupik in schools." And I was like, I don't remember that, but I probably did.
Yeah.
Um, but I didn't grow up doing any of this. I learned this as, my cousin, my aunt's daughter, when my aunt passed, she kind of stepped in, and she was a role model too. And so when I was like 11 or 12, I made my first kuspuks, which is like one of these. It's just a
Mhm.
pullover. But I started learning as I became a young adult, and I just kept taking classes and I kept trying to ask questions, but I didn't grow up doing any of this stuff. So
Nice.
it was all learned along the way. I started like getting interested in maybe like my mid 20s, maybe like my early 20s. I started getting interested because when I was a kid, it wasn't cool to be native. So, like,
Hmm.
we wanted to be white. So,
Hmm.
like, but now it's cool, which is awesome. But I'm like, when we were kids, you wanted to be white,
Sure.
you want to be native. So I stopped
Sure.
Yupik dancing because it wasn't cool.
Um,
And so I really wish I would have just kept at it. But anyways, yeah. So
that
I have learned over the years to like I started taking classes at the college. They would have instructors that would make fur hats. Like anyone that would be willing to share with me, I would ask them. But yeah, I didn't do it for a long time because I was always worried what people would say, like they would judge my stitches. Now I look back and I'm like, well, I wish I would have just kept trying.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I wonder if that's why when I watch your videos about language and what you sew, there's an excitement there about it that seems fresh and new, and it's now learning this, that what you're sharing, and it's because it relatively is because of where it intersected into your life. Usually, I guess if you were doing this when you were younger and it was a part of your life, maybe the newness would have worn off, or like you were saying, it wasn't cool to do those things. So maybe the excitement would not have been there, but because of where it came into your life and the way that you're sharing it now, it does feel like there's a fresh excitement about Yupik language and culture. And for someone like me who is not as familiar with indigenous culture, it's exciting to learn from someone that's excited about Yupik culture. So that's really interesting. I'm glad that you shared that.
Yeah, no, and that's why I'm so like, that is why I'm always advocating, like, just start. Just start. You have to start from somewhere. Like, you can't just wait. If you wait for someone to come and take your hand and show you, you're going to be waiting forever. Like, and I'm always advocating, like, go get a sheet, cut up a sheet. If you don't like if you've got an old sheet, start cutting it. If you can go to a thrift store and you find an old coat, tear it apart and start making stuff. And so like you don't have to have everything. You just have to get started. And so um yeah, and that's why I'm always like, just keep trying to speak your language, however it is. Like, I remember when I would try to speak and I would get made fun of and I would stop. That's why I stopped as a young kid, was because I was like, I would get made fun of because I wasn't saying stuff right, but I also
Mm.
hadn't learned the right way. So now I don't care. I'll say it wrong. And then I'm like, just teach me if I'm saying it wrong. Don't
Yeah.
laugh at me or don't make fun of me. Like, that's not how you learn.
Hmm. Do you think, or I guess, what do you think um, kids that are growing up out in the villages, out in the rural Alaska areas, and they're growing up in a modern, tech-driven, world around them? What is their, from what you see at least, just from your perspective, what is the attitude towards culture, protecting indigenous culture or sharing culture? Is it the same as when you were a kid? Has it evolved? Is it cool? Or, what's your opinion on that?
So I think social media and like everything technology, I think it's a double-edged sword, right? So it's like it's positive, but it's also negative because there's so many other negative aspects on there. But the really cool thing about like having everything online is like you can go and pull up a video on YouTube and find a tutorial on how to make a kuspuk, or you can go in there and how to make a gurak, which is Eskimo ice cream. So like there are things that you can do if you're not sure. You can go and pull up a video and find out how to make it. Now, as far as like the thinking goes of like culture, I'm not sure. I have been, I moved away from my hometown 10 years ago. I go back, and I travel. And I guess it's different for me because when I'm traveling, everyone is so excited to meet me. Like they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's so you pick," and they want a picture and they want to say
Yeah.
hi. They want to come up and say Koyana Chuck Norris. And so I guess
Mm.
for me, that's fun because it's just like, uh, I don't know, like it's fun to be like, for me, I just think like it's so fun to be Yupik. Like we have such a beautiful culture, like, and it's so, like, it's so rich and it's so deep, and we have such beautiful family systems and our connection to the culture and to the land and the animals and, like, everything, like, it's just so fun, and then you think about the stuff that, like, my grandmothers have been sewing, my great-grandmothers, like, they have been sewing, seamstresses, fashion designers, whatever you wanna call them, like, they have been making clothes since forever, and so, like,
Yes.
I just think, like, we have such a rich culture, so I don't really know, it's hard for me to say because, like I said, when I'm traveling, everyone's just like, "Oh my gosh, so you."
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
They're
or people
about
wanna take a picture with me, or they're like,
yeah.
they'll be like, "Hey," I was dropping off some stuff a couple months ago, after the typhoon, and then
Mhm.
somebody was like, "Hey, it's that TikTok girl," and I, like, looked over, and she was, like, 8 or 9, and I just chuckled, and I was like, That's hilarious," and I was
Yeah.
in Greenland, and when I was in Greenland in August, I was leaving the store, and there was an older gentleman, elderish, I don't know, he was maybe 16, and I was walking out, and he goes, "So Yupik," and I, like, looked over, and I was like, "What?" And he knew me, and I was just like, "What the
Oh,
heck?"
yeah. That's awesome.
So, for me, it's hard to say just because I just get recognized kind of
Sure.
in wherever I travel,
Yeah.
a lot of rural places. Um,
So this is where I want to talk about Soyupik and how that is kind of started and how it's evolved to where it's at now. But did you think, like, as a young girl growing up in Bethel, I don't think my thought is that you didn't have this on the radar at all. So what did you think, like, what am I going to be when I grow up? What were your interests, or what did you see your future becoming?
I thought I was gonna be a teacher. So that was my initial pattern of life. I got out of high school, I went to school to be a massage therapist. So I was a massage therapist in my early adult life,
Okay.
and I practiced for a while, and so my goal was to be a teacher. So I was gonna be a teacher because I had a really great teacher when I was in first and second grade, and she kind of like she was just really incredible. And I was like, I want to be that for young kids, right? Like, I want to be that person for young kids. And she just really created this like beautiful, loving space in her classrooms. And so I wanted to do that. Well, I was going to school and was working as a massage therapist. And then I started working in the emergency room. And I
Mm.
was like, oh, I like this. I like this. And then I got to go on medevac rides. And I was like, this is so
Yes.
much fun. And I didn't realize I was addicted to the chaos. It was madness in there. And I was like, oh, I'm comfortable in here. Like, I'm so
Yeah.
comfortable in this space. And the ER is incredible. And I was like, I'm going to work in the ER. I went off to school to be a nurse. Well, I was in the ER, as techs, we had a lot of, we got to do a lot of hands-on stuff, and so I went off to be nursing school. Well, we had a nursing instructor, and, it was one of those nursing instructors that would fail out a student.
Hmm.
I was that student. So,
Mm.
I had a hard time keeping my mouth shut, because I had learned so much in the ER and I
Um,
just want to share. And I'm like, let me share all this stuff. Well, that
mhm,
was not a great idea. So anyway, so I was failed out of nursing school. So I worked all these jobs. Um, OCS, nicotine control, like I worked. And in the meantime, I'm still working at this restaurant. I had worked at this Greek restaurant for about 15 years. I started
mm,
working there when I was 16. And so, um, but I had no idea. When you grow up in trauma and chaos and all of that stuff, you find your purpose with a job. Like your purpose is a job. And so I was like, really figuring out like I need to do XYZ. I need to do this because this defines me, as a person. Sort of the Western way of thinking. Um, at any rate, I decided to go back into nursing because I want to help people. I knew I wanted to be a nurse practitioner. I want to help people. I didn't want to go to MD school. I had applied for PA school. I didn't get in. So we moved away and I applied for nursing school. We had a new instructor. I got in and I didn't get in down here on the Kenai Peninsula, but I got in down back home in Bethel. So I was going back and forth for school and I started school and I was 6 months pregnant.
wow,
Um, and I had my daughter the first semester. Um,
yeah,
she came with me when she was 2 days old. She came to our final study session. I brought her in
wow,
the carrier. This was in April, so it was still kind of chilly out. And she came with me at 2 days old to our final study session for the semester. And at 5 days old, she came with me to the school and she came and took my final exams with me.
wow,
And my husband had worked, my husband worked shift work, so he was working 7 on, 7 off. And so like we had other kids down here and so he was coming back and so it was just, I was basically kind of raising her and going to school. And so she graduated nursing school with me. We would go back and forth for nursing school. We stayed at my dad's house in my old bedroom, my high school bedroom, which was hilarious because I'm there with my daughter and I had my dog.
yeah,
Finished nursing school. She was 18 months old. And I decided to start Sew Yupik in 2015. I had started taking sewing classes, kuspuks sewing workshops with other instructors. And I'd been taking so many because I was going to school.
mhm,
And they were like, all right, it's your turn to teach classes. And that was the fall of 2015. And so that year, 2015, I applied for a grant and I got it. So I bought some new sewing machines and then I started teaching workshops. And that was, I had started my Facebook page, my Instagram page. I think I started making tutorials at that point. I have no idea. There's some really old tutorials where I'm like, what were you wearing? Like, don't wear a robe while you're making tutorials. Like, fix your hair. Like, what is going on? So, anyway, I started, but honestly, like when I was starting everything, I was like, I don't care how I look. I'm just going to share whatever I know. Like, I really don't. I had never cared about that. So I
mhm,
started it with the goal of like just wanting to teach people. And I had a lot of imposter syndrome. I was like, I don't know enough. Like I
um,
don't know enough to be able to teach. I shouldn't be teaching, but I got over that and I was like, just teach. Um, but I never thought that it would evolve around to this. And I never thought that I would be in a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner program, psych has always been something that psych and mental health has always been something that I have has been a part of my life since I was
mm,
small. And I just felt so comfortable in it. And I switched from family to psych just this last year, 2 years ago or something, because I was originally going for family.
mm,
But I never thought So Yupik would take me to Greenland or Whitehorse last year or Seattle, or like I never thought it would take me these places. And so when it does and when it did, I was just like, okay, you're exactly where you need to be and what you're
mm,
doing. And I don't know. It's interesting. It's been an interesting ride. And in that time my business partner and I, we created a coloring book. So we created the Yupik alphabet coloring book. We did that together and that was fun. And just a bunch of other stuff along the way that I've done with so you pick sort of thing. So it's funny because my husband's like, you're so you pick here, but you're Nikki at home, or you're like
Mm.
mom or wife, or like
Yeah.
there's two different.
Yeah. There's a lot of layers going on right there. I do have some questions about those different you brought up a lot of good things that I do wanna talk about. Um, so just starting wrapping up the family portion of it. So you you expressed how your upbringing was chaos. You shared about, the relationship with your mom, the importance of your aunt and the family that kind of filled in those gaps in your life. I guess what are you bringing in to your role as a mother with your own family with that upbringing? I kind of had a similar experience with my father and addiction, and I think about it often as a dad now and as a husband, trying to be aware of what I'm doing with my kids. Am I okay? Am I am I leading them in the right direction? I don't want to, show them what I experienced as a kid. How do you take what you experienced and then lead your family, or in your role as a mother in your own house with your kids?
Um, that one hit me really hard. I was not expecting it. So I had done a lot of healing before I had kids. I waited a while. I was like, I'm not ready. I'm not, mentally, emotionally, like anything. I was not ready. So I really worked hard on like, my like therapy and that sort of just, like understanding. So like researching like adult children of alcoholics and adult
Mm.
children of emotionally immature parents. And I started doing a lot of research and like coping mechanisms and trauma responses and all of those things. So I had done a lot of research and I was like, all right, I'm ready to have a kid now. And then when you have kids, it's like, nope, it's Pandora's box opens of all that shit. And you're just
Yeah.
like, it's stuff that you didn't remember. There are
Mm,
so many things when my daughter had reached certain ages, when my son, because they're about the same age apart as my younger sibling and I. So when my daughter would reach certain ages and my son would, there was memories that would come up to the surface and I'm like, why are these coming? Like, I'm like, why is this happening? Like, why am I remembering these things? Like, I don't remember that stuff. And so it'd be like traumatic memories that would be coming up. And it was hard. Like I just was like, I wasn't ready for it. And as a mom, I suffered from, postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, postpartum rage, postpartum OCD, not real bad, but like my postpartum rage was really bad. And it was like, there's a time when I kicked a hole in the wall and I was
mm,
like, okay, you're not okay, And so, and that sort of got me in check. And, but I was able to kind of start diving more into it and like understanding and learning. But it was also at the same time as like, I'm reparenting myself. And then there was that sort of like comparison, right? Where I'm just like, man, like, I'm looking at my kids. I'm like, you have no idea. Like, you have no idea how good you have it. Like, are you kidding me? And then I had to switch it to like, man, what a beautiful life I can give you.
mm,
Like, what a beautiful thing I can do, reparent myself, and I can give you this beautiful life because I've worked so hard. And how beautiful is that? Not how lucky, but just how beautiful of a life that I can provide you. And with my upbringing, the one thing that I will stick to with my kids is boundaries. If
mm,
there are a-holes, if there are not nice people, family or not, they're not a part of our lives, period.
mm,
Like at all. Like I will never let my kids be around anybody who is unkind, disrespectful anyway towards me, my husband, or anybody. Like, cause I'm like, I've already dealt with that. We've done my whole life. We've had unkind. My mom was unkind my whole life. I don't put up with that, period. And I won't let my kids deal with that. And so, I think that there were so many lessons that I've learned in my mom. Obviously, at the time, I didn't understand it, but now looking back, I'm able to see. And I don't know. It was hard It was really hard, but at the same time, it was really beautiful because then it was also allowing me to recognize where I wasn't healed still, like where I
Mhm.
wasn't okay. And so it was like, all right, you need to work on this. Like you keep coming back to this. And there's a lot of things in my suitcase that I have not picked up yet. Like there is a lot, like
Hmm.
a lot. There's still so much more that I have to like work through. Um, and at some point, I'd like to go on an ayahuasca retreat or,
Mm,
something like that to
yeah.
sort of help me reprocess those memories. I,
Mm,
I did therapy. I've done therapy. And but there's a lot of deep stuff that my body was like, nope, you're not safe. We're not going there. Like, nope, So my goal at some point is to go on, try to use psychedelics in a way to see if it can help open and help me to see like, hey, you're safe. So
yeah, and that might be huge for you going into work as an ANP, especially in that psychiatric mental health realm, because those psychedelics and all of those treatments are kind of, I think they're cutting edge now. They've probably been around for a while, but at least
yeah.
for me, I've just heard more stories within the last few years of people having these experiences and like a lot of progress made in their past traumas through this. And so that might just for you personally, of course, could be helpful, but then might open up your eyes to these people that you help in the future as well. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well,
So, and I just, I as indigenous people, as you big people, like we've always used the land and our food and our music and gathering and family as like medicine, like we've never turned to a pill. And so like
mm,
we have the tools to heal ourselves. So
yeah. What is your kids' view of what you're doing with Soyupic and, indigenous culture and, what are they taking from it all? I know if your kids are like mine, anything that I'm like all about, they're either gonna love it or they're gonna be like, I don't want to do it because dad because dad likes it. Where do your kids fall in with that?
they kind of just like, oh, mom's doing her thing, like, or like, oh, you're making another video, or let's go.
Yeah.
So like they have no idea. I'm
Yeah.
just mom. So it's just kind of like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I
What's
chuckle
the age
because like I want to make them all stuff. Like I want to make them a parka and I want to make them a hat and I want to make them all these things and they're not gonna wear them. And I'm just like, you have no idea. Like you have no idea. Like how cool your mom is to be able to make
yeah.
you like a whole wardrobe and you don't even want to wear it.
What's the age range of your kid?
So altogether, they're six. So
Okay.
from like 28 to 5.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, but the last 2 here are 8 and 5.
Okay. And they're just like, "Meh."
Yeah, no, they just mom, they're like, "Ah, mom,"
Yeah.
but they love it when they get
Yeah.
to travel because they have traveled with me. Like, so they've gone to Nome and Afognak Island, and they've gone to
Mhm.
Bethel with me, and they've gone to Anchorage, and they travel with me. Like I said, when my husband worked shift work, I was doing workshops, and so I would
Mhm.
bring the kids with me, and we would just drive up, get on the plane, go teach a sewing class, go pick berries, go to the beach, like go do fun stuff, and then come home. And so, like, they miss it. My husband's retired now. And so they're just like, when are we going to travel again? They're like, they're not used to this disruption of their travel plans. Cause, like I
Yeah.
said, they've been traveling with me. My son is 5. They've been traveling with me for the last 5 years now, and even before, my daughter was traveling with me. She went to her first sewing class, she was, like, 3 months old.
Mhm.
So,
Wow.
like, they've been with mom when mom's traveling and teaching sewing workshops, and they would go with me wherever I went, so
It's taken you all over the place. I mean, you shared some of these places. I mean, Greenland, that just seems like an amazing opportunity. I can imagine the type of people that you're able to meet doing this. And I assume these people are reaching out to you and like, hey, Nikki, come do a workshop, with us. Can you talk about like some of those places that you've been to? Maybe cool stories from people that you've met, or things that have come of those trips or workshops?
Some of the places that I've gone to, I've just sent a cold email. So, like, I've gotten really good at, like, how many no's can I get? So I kinda look at the no's when I send out emails. I'm like, "Let me see how many emails I can send out and how many people say no," and how many people will say yes. And
Mm,
so, the Greenland trip happened because somebody purchased a bag from me, and and sending it there was like, I don't know, I don't know how long it took to get there, 3 weeks or something. But anyway, so he received it and it was gonna be a birthday gift for his wife who worked at the Gatok Cultural Center, which is where I ended up teaching the sewing workshop. So anyway, so I sent her a cold email. I'm like, "Hey," told him, "I would really love to get to Greenland sometime. My wife works here. Send her an email. You didn't hear it from me." So I send her an email and she sends me a message back. "We would love to have you. Can we talk?" And so I was like, "Oh." And in the meantime, her husband had bought her a birthday bag. It wasn't her birthday for like 6 months later. He's still holding on to this. And we have
mm,
this meeting, and I don't say anything. So that's how this Greenland trip came to be. Like, and just somebody purchasing something from me and being like, "Hey, I'd love to come there. Can I come?" I had the opportunity to go to Montreal this year, and I wasn't able to go because I was in clinicals, and it was like artists from all over Canada and Greenland and Alaska coming together in Montreal, and I was really bummed I didn't get to go. Um, but they were like, "We want to pay your way. We want you on an artist panel. Like, can you come?" And it just didn't work out. And so when I went to Whitehorse last year, I had applied to be a teaching artist and I had gotten it. So, a lot of these opportunities when I'm traveling is me applying, or me just saying, "Hey, I want to go here," or making a video and being like, "Hey, I want to go this place." And so, if I have friends or family down in the States, I'll be like, "Hey, what's a um what's a art center down there that I can email?" Like, and I'll start sending out
yeah,
emails if I want to go see them. So if I want to see friends or family, I'm like, "Hey, let me send this email out." So
that's
um
awesome.
I used to get discouraged, but now I turned it the other way and I'm like, this is a game now. How many no's can we get and how many yeses can we get? And then when I get the yes, I'm like, "Oh shoot, now I have to go." And so like but yeah, so those trips, and then I went to Washington. I taught a workshop down at UW down there. And so that was really fun because I
Cool.
got picked up by somebody. There was somebody standing there with the sign and it had my name on it. And I got shuttled to the place I was staying. And I was like, this is crazy. Cause usually like 2 weeks ago, I was on a four-wheeler, like going to the clinic or going to the tribe. So like it's such a crazy difference to see like being on the back of a four-wheeler to like 2 weeks later, somebody's at the airport with a sign for me. So it's like,
That's awesome. I think that's good advice too, or at least a good perspective for people that are looking to, well, whatever their craft is, whatever they're doing. Don't view it as just because you get the no's. Don't be down on yourself. View it as, yeah, how many no's can I get? Because eventually I'm going to get to the yeses. I think that's solid. That's a solid perspective for sure.
yeah, I mean, it's anything I go into it. It's like if I'm putting, I'm trying to monetize my TikTok now. So let me see, like let me just try. But it's for me, it's a game. Like, all right, let's see, can we go viral? Can we make enough
Yeah,
videos? Is it possibility? Like not like, oh, I'm only getting 1,000 views. Like, darn. It's just like, all right, like, so how do I need to put more? But so I look at everything in a way that it's like it's a game, but it's a fun way. It's not in a negative way of like, darn, you know, getting discouraged. Like, don't get discouraged.
yeah. And I think that's a really good perspective. I feel that just in doing podcasting like this and like, oh, oh, this video didn't do well. I wonder what the problem was. Oh, maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe the content's not good enough, or maybe I need this or that. But if you view it as a game, if you view it as like I'm going to keep plugging in and figuring it out, it makes it less personal, and you're just like, "This is I'm doing it because I love it." So if it takes off, awesome. If it
Yeah.
doesn't, whatever.
Yeah, I'm gonna share this anyway. So, like,
Yeah,
either it does great or it doesn't. If I reach so where my thing is like, if I reach one person, I'm happy. I
worth
am
it.
ha
Yeah,
It's worth it. It's worth it. If I find somebody out there who's like, "Man, I can do this." Like, I see Nikki was so Yupik, like, she came from a shitty excuse my language, but she came from
you're
a
fine.
crazy background, and she was able to push through, and, she had to put a restraining order on her mom and, like, all this stuff, like, if she can do that, like, anything is possible.
That's really cool.
And that's what I tell kids, like, when I would travel and teach sewing classes, I would tell kids, they'd be sitting there and they'd be, like, kinda pissed off, and I'm like, "Look, I get it. I was in your shoes. Like, listen, my background," and I would share and I'd open up and the kids would instantly, like, relax, and I love teaching kids because you can get them, like, if you have one positive role model, and, I would just they would kinda relax and then be like, "Okay, like, she's one of us. Like, she's not just this, like, white passing native who's like coming here and is like trying to teach us something. Like she's actually like, I grew up with honey buckets and no running water. I'm telling these kids, like, I get it. Like my
Yeah,
favorite thing was going to the dump and finding treasures at the dump. Like, I get it. I
yeah.
understand. Like I know what it's like. So
That's really cool. So you mentioned the making the kuspuks earlier, and then you have these fur hats that you do. What kind of materials do you use in what you create at So You Pick?
So with mukluks, mukluks, we use bearded seal for the base. That's the
Mm.
sole. And so you have to crimp them. And they're waterproof. So that's the sole. We have calf skin. We have river otter, and then we have river otter tail for the jivagot. Jivuks are like the houseflies. So we call them the houseflies. We call the ones on the front jivagot, which is like little houseflies. And then
Huh.
we've got yarn. The colors of the yarn, they used to traditional colors in our Yupik culture are red, white, blue, and black. And so those are like they all have a symbolic meaning. And then we use wolverine tassels and we also use beaver. And so that's for the mukluks. When we make for hats, we use anything marten, fox, rabbit, beaver, sea otter, sealskin, mouton, like we use all these sort of things when we make, that stuff. And then
Mm.
parkas are, like my grandmother made all her kids parkas and they were all made of ground squirrel, like so
Hmm.
many different ground squirrels that they would
Wow.
piece together and hand
That's a
sew
lot of ground squirrels.
and then they were decorated and they had the calf skin and they had
Mm.
beadwork and they had yarn and they were intricate and they had a story and some of the parkas tell a story. So there's like a qalik and there's another one, and so, like, there's a story. You can see the chest of the calf skin, and there's, like, red and black. It's the story. There is a tall man, I can't remember the full story, but he's running. The village had given him ugly food to eat, and he's puking, so it's blood and black, and so you can
Mm.
see the lines. There's, like, black and red lines to symbolize, like, I don't know his name, but he's puking. And so like there are some things that have a story. And so like I said, my grandmother made all her kids' parkas all out of squirrel and they're like intricate. And the coolest thing about this was my grandma's parka was in the Quilt Folk. So I was in the Quilt Folk magazine for the
Yeah,
August edition and my grandma's parka was in there. And I was just like, that was the
that's
coolest thing.
awesome.
My husband's like,
Mm.
but you're in it. And I'm like, I know, but look at my grandma's parka. Like,
Yeah,
so um but
that's
yeah, so there's just, we've fish skin, seal gut, like everything. Everything has been used, and I tan fish skin. I've taught fish skin sewing workshops and, I've sewed with seal gut and, like we've used everything.
how
So
does fish skin sewing work? Like, is how does that process go where, like, it can be sewn?
it's just like any sewing anything else. It's like
Uh,
sewing leather, you
okay,
you tan it into a leather and then you
okay,
soften it enough and then it's just like sewing with leather
I
basically.
see. Okay.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's awesome. What would you say is the most, like, requested item or what you spend the most time sewing? And I guess the most demand.
Well, probably kuspuks because I've been sewing those for 10 years, and I recently started expanding with skin sewing and fish
Okay.
skin, and this summer I learned how to grass basket weave, which that is a whole 'nother thing as well, and it's crazy, but it's really awesome. But, mostly kuspuks, that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years, but within the last couple of years, I just had been skin sewing, but I just hadn't really, expanded on it, and so then winter time is when we sit down and we just sit, sew, watch your trash
Nice.
TV, just, sit by the fire because it's cold, so, I just started skin sewing again recently, so but yeah,
Mm.
no, I don't all of it, I mean, people want me to make anything, I don't take orders, but, people will
Okay.
ask.
Yeah.
I took orders way back when, and it was stressful because people are like, "Are
Mm.
you almost done? I want this color. I want it like that, and I want this, and I want that." And so usually, like for me, it's just fun to be able to make. And if people want it, they want it. If they don't,
Yeah.
they don't. Somebody will take it.
Mm. One of the things that and we touched on it briefly was, um, mental health advocacy. It's something that you're, professionally working on now. You've done some videos where you talk about grief and dealing with grief and loss. Um, do you want to talk about that topic, and just what you've learned or what you want people to? I know you could probably say a lot on that topic, but uh, we live in a place where mental health and depression it runs rampant all across the state for a variety of reasons. Whether it's the location of, if it's the darkness, whatever it is, the cold. What is your advice, I guess, to people in this time of year? That's the darkest, and to help get them through into the brighter days ahead, or some advice that is just solid no matter what time of year.
So my grandmother's always said, like, stay busy, keep your hands busy, because if you don't, your mind will wander. And so, like, just staying busy and not in an unhealthy way. Like, don't like overwork yourself to the point where it's like you're exhausted now, but it's just like keeping busy. And so, like, they say your as Yupiks, like we say umyok, like your mind is so powerful. Your mind is a powerful thing. And if you let it fester or sit or allow it to go wherever, it's gonna take you wherever. And so you have to be really careful to not give your mind that much power to be able to, just keep busy, keep your hands busy, keep working. Um, the one thing that I always talk so there's a lot of things that I always talk about, like, as we're in Alaska, right? And so we probably don't get the best of supplements and nutrients in our diet. And of course, and we're also don't have the largest food choice unless you have the opportunity to eat your traditional foods, which are packed with so many things. And of course, we have to supplement it now with Western foods. And so, really taking good care of your like health, like nutrients, supplements, like all of those things. I and then water, movement, like really moving. Like if you can just move your body, if you can get outside, even if it's just for 5 minutes, if you can get outside to just, but not to like get stuck on your phone or not to get stuck on like social medias, like to be moving and doing stuff. We were not designed to be staring at a phone all day. So
Mm.
like just to get moving and to keep your body in motion moving forward, and really just trying to nourish your body, with grief. The one thing that I was really like I stressed about was at least getting one nutritious meal a day. I couldn't, you can't eat when you're in that moment, but really just focusing on getting one meal a day and then just getting water in. But the one thing I always encourage is like just keep moving and to keep your hands busy, like,
Right.
however that be. And I recognize I recognize. So this is what I tell people. If you see me doing 700 million things, I'm not okay. But that's okay because in those moments, I need it. At some point it's going to stop. But if I'm on social media pages and I'm doing 875 million things, it usually means cuz I don't want to, like I'm not ready to feel, and so I'm just trying to keep busy and just keep moving forward. But the other part of that is you have to be careful when you're working on stuff that you don't transfer your energy
Hmm.
because you don't want to transfer that into the stuff you're working in. So, um but yeah, I don't know. It's um and just becoming self-aware. Like the one thing like I'm always encouraging is like just to be aware of yourself and aware of your feelings. Like, everyone comes to the table with the lens of what they've been through. And so they see things the way of what they've been through. So they're going to look at things totally different from what you've been through and how you see it. And it also depends on like the levels of how much inner work you've done and like how much you can recognize and see like when you come to the table. And there was a really good book I read, What Happened to You by Oprah Winfrey and Stephen Perry. And it really helped to shift the lens of like, not why are you behaving this way, but like what happened to you? It was almost in that curious sense of like what happened to you and why are your patterns of behavior, why are you behaving this way, to not
Yeah.
like not why are you behaving this way, to like what happened to you for you to behave this way and create these patterns of behavior that keep you safe.
Hmm. That's have you read the book? You mentioning that book and that topic? I'll be honest, I haven't finished this book, but it was recommended to me along the same lines. It's called The Body Keeps the Score. Have you heard of that book before?
I started reading that and it's very dry in the beginning.
Yeah.
It's very dry. You have to get
Yeah.
past the dryness.
Okay.
But it, you know, it does. Your body will hold your trauma. And I know for a fact myself because there were some things when I was younger that had happened to me that my body still holds on to, and I haven't been able to get to those spaces yet. Oh, I know it because I feel it.
Hmm.
And there are times when I feel unsafe and it's just my kids. And I have to remind myself that, hey, you're okay. Like, you're not 5 years old right now. You are 39, and this is your child that's hugging you. And so, The Body Keeps Score is a really good one. Anything by Gabor Mate is incredible. Like any of his podcasts, any of his anything, like the way that he talks about trauma and how trauma is, and because trauma will it'll change those neural pathways, and it'll develop things, and it'll allow you to create these patterns of behavior that you think are safe, where it's just like people pleasing is not a normal thing. Like that is, or like being hypervigilant and watching people's emotions, that is not a normal thing. Like planning for something that's going to happen, like the worst possible case scenario that's going to happen, that is not a normal thing. That is a trauma response. Like, and that's your body's way of saying, like, hey, if XYZ happens, I'm going to be ready because I've already gotten this plan in place. I know what I'm going to do. When it's like,
Mhm.
you don't have to do that.
Yeah. Gosh, that's so relatable for me. If only you knew.
Like, you don't have to. Like, and I'm always like, you are safe. Like, you don't
Yeah.
have to plan for someone's funeral. Like, no, 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 we're not there yet. No, no, stay right here. And so my therapist really helped me to be like, when you have those dumb thoughts, you walk it to the garage and you put it in that tote. You imagine you're walking it back there and you're putting it in the tote and you're shutting it and you're
That's
leaving that
perfect.
thought. So
That's
it
awesome.
is not as you nah, you don't need to. You're safe. You can stay right here. You don't have to go and like 6 months, 6 years into the future.
Yeah. I wanted to the other thing that you mentioned earlier was, with language. So you have kind of had this new motivation for the Yupik language, in your young adult life, or mid-20s, I think you said. How did the idea to do the Yupik alphabet, coloring book come about?
So there's not anywhere you can buy anything like that online.
Mm,
And unless you're in a community that has a Yupik immersion program. So your child can learn the language through a Yupik immersion program, but there's not really anything like you can go online and purchase a coloring book. And so when I was pregnant with my daughter, I was starting to and I didn't know we didn't know what we were having. So she was a surprise. And so, when I first got pregnant, I was like, okay, I want to start gathering like Yupik things that I can kind of teach my kiddo. And I couldn't really find anything. And I was like, I'm not finding anything. There's really not much out there. And so I had gotten this idea, I'd seen them for Espanol and like French and Germany, like you can see them all. They're all over. And I was like, why don't we have one for Yupik? And so that's when I kind of started thinking about it, started looking into grants, asked my friend who's now my business partner. I was like, hey, would you be interested in doing this with me? We couldn't really figure out the rights, with the images and that kind of stuff. So we're just like, let's just be partners. Cause I was like, I don't know how to do it with rights. If I'm paying you for the work, is it my work or is it your work? And so
Hmm.
we'll just go in at 50-50. So at any rate, we applied for a grant, the Rasmussen grant. We got it one year. And so we were able to create that and bring it to life. But it had been a long time in the works. I had been working on, I have my dictionary here in my sewing room. So like it's anywhere in here. So like if I'm thinking of something, like I pull up my dictionary and I read it. I had taken Yupik classes when I was in high school or in college, and I had taken Yupik classes at the college back home, and I had taken classes at UAA with my aunt, who was the Yupik teacher. And so I had I've been able to write, and I can understand, and I can speak. I'm not fluent. I can understand more than I can, and so the hard part about the Yupik dictionary is we don't have a language like A to Z. We have like a, cha, e, uk, e, and then like, but there's like double, we have double ones. We have like double letters, and we have stop consonants, and we have voiceless fricatives, and we have nasals, and we have like, and so it's like there's a lot of things. And so trying to figure out how do we do this?
Yeah.
Because there's some that are like, and I'm like, okay, how we can't do because it's like really hard to like, we have and then we have and so it's like trying to figure out. So we
Yeah.
kind of went with the basics, but there's so much more because it's like we could go into it. Like that would be a whole thing of like trying to figure out like, all right, we have, how do we tell people who don't speak Yupik what a fricatives is and a voiceless fricatives and a nasal? Like how do we tell them these things? And so, and then of course with the endings, our endings are kind of like Espanol. So like if we have like when it ends in a Q, it's one. When it ends in a K, it's two, but not always. As you could say dulukaruk. Yeah, but we say dulukaruk, and that's one. Or duntuak, that's one. And so like trying to figure out a way to explain like there's exceptions. And then when it ends in a T, it's three or more. And in
Mm.
our Yupik language, there's no masculine or feminine. If you say something, it's he, she, it. So like we would say akfagalu. Well, let me see. Trying to think of a word. But anyways, if it ended in a Q, it would be like he, she, it is running. Like it's just that. And we don't have he or she. Like, and you hear elders when they tell a story, they'll be like, he was something something, and we're like, oh no, I mean achen she. Like, and so like it's because there's not the languages, it was like he, she, it.
Yeah. It covered all.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really
So
cool. But I can see how that would be a challenge in trying to put that in, you know, in a in a
and a
coloring.
coloring,
Yeah, to
yeah,
try to teach people. Yeah, that would be a
or
huge challenge.
kids. Like that would be so confusing. Like, what, mom, what is a voiceless fricative? I'm like, I
Just
don't know.
what did you just say?
Yeah.
Did you just cuss? No.
Yeah.
Where can you find this coloring book?
It's on Amazon.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it's
What do
on
people
Amazon,
search?
just Yupik alphabet coloring book.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put myself on the spot here. We already talked about the very first time I saw your video about the Guyana Chuck Norris, which comes from Guyana Chucknuck.
Yuck.
Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
So, what other words could you teach me right now?
Uh, Huaca.
So, Waka. Is it waka?
What, like hua,
Hua.
waka.
Waka.
Uh-huh. But like
It's
the ka
it's
is like a
it's
raven.
back
You know
here,
how
huh?
the yeah. You know how the raven makes the ka sound?
Mhm. Okay,
Ka,
yeah.
ka,
Waka.
ka, yeah. So
Waka.
paka, you can say jangachit.
Janajit?
Jang nga. Nga is
Yeah,
like nga.
nasally a little bit.
Yeah, nga.
And what word is that? What does it mean?
Oh, how are you?
How are you?
Yeah. Jangachit.
Jangajit.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
And then you would say, somebody asked you, you would say asichtoa.
Okay, you're gonna have to break that one down for me.
So the sound is like your tongue is in the middle of your mouth going
Uh, one
asichtoa.
asich sithtoa.
Asichtoa.
Asith asithtoa. Oh my
It's
god.
so when we would get scolded, they would go that is how you knew
Mm,
you were getting scolded. So it's that sound.
I see. Okay. The, waka is
Paka.
probably the coolest greeting that I'm aware of. I fluent in English only, but s I grew up around Spanish, Portuguese, I know a little bit of Tagalog and Hindi, and they all have their own greetings. I love hearing you Waka, it's Nikki with So You Pick. It is the freaking best. It is so cool. It just has it has such a cool hola is so boring to me.
Mm.
And there's no I don't know. It just yeah, the Yupik greeting is so cool. So yeah, thanks for tolerating my attempt at speaking Yupik.
That's okay. That's okay. At
Freaking-
least you tried.
yeah.
At least you tried.
One of the last, I mean, there's a couple things that I wanted to touch on, mostly with how people can follow you and keep up with So Yupik and what you have going on. But one of the things that came up recently that I saw you were really involved in, at least on social media, and I know that you were transporting supplies and trying to get supplies for the families and people that were displaced from the typhoon earlier this year. What was your experience in being involved with that? And like what did you see? What stories have you heard? You know, what do people need now that they could still do? I was thinking just with, you know, the weather and the temperature and these whole communities that are just abandoned and destroyed and what those families must be going through now, you know, living in Anchorage or whatever communities that they're in. What was your experience with after all of that happened with the typhoon?
So I initially started sharing about it because I wasn't seeing much on the news, like nationally. Like initially there wasn't much about it. And when you hear about hurricanes and you hear about, all this stuff, like they'll be projecting it and they just talk about it and they're like hurricane so and so is making its way and hurricane so and so has now shifted and hurricane, and you hear
Yeah.
it and there wasn't much about here in Alaska. And, and so I just kind of saw that as an opening of like, okay, let me just share about this. And I'll just kind of share what it's like. I've been out to Qipnaq, I've been out to those communities, in stopping on the way home from another village. And so, not spending time, but I know a lot of people from those communities. And so I knew it was like devastating. And then of course I had worked in the ER. And so I knew a lot of people, that had been impacted by it. And so I just kind of was like, all right, I'm just going to share about this and, like just get word out. I've got this following and there's all these people on here. And I was like, and people want to genuinely help. And so I was like, let me just start making videos and sharing all this stuff. And so I was just doing that just to kind of just share for other folks to like, hey, this is that. Or I would share other messages from the Heritage Center or South Central Foundation or ENTHC or, like the Western anything. So I was just kind of getting the word out and sharing info. And then, having family and friends out there, they'd reach out and they'd be like, we're not seeing, there's not enough coats here at the Egan Center. Can you let somebody know? And, they're not letting us, get stuff that we need. Can you let somebody know that we want to be able to have access to go get clothing if we need it, or snacks or food?
Mm.
And so I just kind of was like, all right, let me just share, and it was just basically to just kind of help spread the word. I had 40,000 followers on Instagram, and I don't know, 10,000 or 40 on Facebook and 10 on Instagram. I was like, that's 50,000 people that can reach out to, and then it gets shared out to others. And so, um, yeah, I mean, it's they're all in uncharted territories. So this is all something very new, and it's going to be a long um it's going to be a long road. And like, in the initial they had all this help, but they're going to still continue to need it moving forward. And they're working with there was a fireweed foundation got started, actually. And so that's a foundation that was created in Anchorage because they saw this need that there was nowhere in Alaska who could kind of jump in and, get all this stuff. And so um Adam, who I met at AFN, and I was like making videos, and I was like, he was kind of helping in the background. Well, now Adam helped create this fireweed foundation. He saw a need that was needed, in a disaster time. And so now he created this foundation that, can gather coats and winter gear and boots and all that
Awesome.
kind of stuff. And it was really awesome to see because it was like, he was just kind of like, I want to start something. And I was like, that would be so needed. And now it started. And so he's working with Heritage Center and all these other places, and, working to try to get, winter gear and all that kind of stuff for folks. And because they had to uproot 2 villages and other villages, other people from other villages whose homes got damaged, and are not livable right now. And so it's gonna be a really long road. Um, what they don't talk about, though, is, like, our people, we lived by the seasons.
Mm.
We didn't live in one spot, and I don't know necessarily if they would have chose those spots to live year round where the communities were, because our elders were so smart, and they moved. We moved. We went summer camp, spring camp, fall camp, winter camp. We weren't in one spot at one time.
Mm.
And so what a lot of people don't understand is when the government came in, they were like, the school is here. You live here now. Where it's like, maybe if they would have asked them, and I don't know, because obviously you don't really know what happened back then, but maybe if they would ask, like, hey, where would be the best spot to live year round? They may have said, we need to be up high ground. We need to be up here because of the elements and the weather and everything. And so, like, where these schools were placed, like, the people had no choice. I don't know if folks are familiar with the Molly Hooch case.
Mm.
Um, Kids were forced into schools. There's a
Oh, I have heard about
there's
that.
a case, I gotta look it up. I think it's Molly Hooch, but there was this case where it was like all the kids had to be in school, and I could be totally wrong. I'm
Mm.
trying to think. I think it's Molly Hooch case, but it was in the early 1900s, I wanna say, or 1920s, 19 I don't know. Anyways,
Okay.
my math is all wrong. I could be totally wrong, but basically what they said was every kid needed to be in school. Well, these parents were gonna get punished if the kids weren't in school. And you're talking about people who lived off the land.
Yeah.
Like, that was their school. It's like,
Mm. Yeah.
so, uh,
Interesting.
but these communities where they were placed, I don't know if they would have said, let's put the school right here," because there are places that they're eroding so fast. I mean, Newtok eroded. They had to move to Mukluks, which is on a higher ground. But
Mm.
Nuktak is down here where the river just eroded. My mom's home community in Nunapitchuk, they're eroding. The river's eroding. The permafrost is thawing and houses are literally sinking into the ground. So,
Wow.
I don't
Yeah,
think people really understood that, and a lot of people were like, "Why don't they just get on a plane?" And I'm like, "You don't understand, a plane ride is $600 one way, like, and you've got a family of however many, like, they don't have that luxury of just get or people like, "Why don't they go to high ground?" And like, you're not understanding. I don't think you know Alaska geography.
yeah. No, that's
So,
a really good point to make. I'm glad you said that because I don't think people do understand. And you bring up a good point too with the way the news works. It's all over the news, or it was slow to be on the news in the beginning, and
it was
then then
oh,
it's on the news. But then these people are still adjusting and in uncharted territory, like you said, and that process is still going to be long, and there's going to have to be a plan, in order to restore those communities, and that's the long road that kind of no one really pays attention to, and so it's something that I was curious about, and have kind of kept my eye open for that foundation that you mentioned, the fireweed. Is it called the Fireweed Foundation?
Fireweed Foundation,
I think
yeah.
that's such a great idea. I'm really happy to hear that because I think the response in the beginning was that Alaskans wanted to do something, and
But
everyone was kinda doing their own thing, but it wasn't really like there wasn't a good centralized, like, response for it or response to it. It was kind of fragmented, like, the National Guard was involved, but, like, there was other communities, there was other individuals doing stuff, so to know that there's something now that could be more centralized to respond to something like that is awesome news.
yeah, and there was a lot of red tape because with the Red Cross, they have so many
Mm,
things they have to do, and so it's not like you could just, they're even just bringing native food was kind of something that was like uncharted territories. They're not really familiar with native food. It's not canned. It's not, it's
mhm.
not in a you can't just open
Processed.
it out of a yeah, you can't go buy it at the store. Like not in Greenland. You can go to Greenland and buy native food out of the freezers, but we don't have that luxury here in Alaska. So there's a lot of things that they kind of were not familiar with, and just the language barrier. They did have translators, but, as we it's the way that we are in our culture is like, um, you don't really make a fuss, like, and so there's a lot of just things that, like, they're not gonna go and immediately just, "I need this, this, and this." Like, they're just gonna sit there quietly and wait till someone is like, here's
Mm,
something," like, and so yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, but yeah, it's gonna be a long road and it's just gonna I don't know what they're gonna do. I mean, it's have been they have all come from very like I don't know, they came from a quiet life, they come
mm,
from just quiet, hardworking, packing water, going out and getting your food, and they go and prep all year for getting food to now they're thrown into the city
yeah,
where a lot of like, these communities, they don't have vehicle. They have four-wheelers and snow machines, and they don't have trucks and cars and buses and all that kind of stuff. And so it's just like a totally new world they're navigating in.
yeah. Well, I appreciated your work in filling the gap and raising awareness, um, for those Western communities that were displaced, using your platform for good, and, I'm sure many others appreciated that as well, so thank you for that. I want to see if there's anything that you're looking ahead to with Soyupik, any trips or any exciting stuff in the future. You did mention that the TikTok shop is something new, something newer for you. But yeah, just anything that you're looking ahead to that people can be excited for or expect in the future.
I am working on well, so TikTok, I'm working to monetize it. I've
Okay.
monetized my Facebook and my Instagram. So this coming year is like I'm trying to figure out a way to monetize TikTok and then also monetize YouTube, right? So to have
Okay.
those passive income streams that I don't have to do much that maybe they generate, maybe they don't. It's honestly, I'm already making videos. So it's like I'm just all I'm doing is uploading them. So um the other thing so the things that I'm looking forward to, I am gonna be working on a pattern, so I'm hoping to make a vest bus book pattern that I can put on Etsy. It's something that I've been wanting to do for quite some time. I have just gotten into the mindset of it needs to be perfect. Well, it doesn't need to. I just need to
Mhm.
put something out there. So
Right.
that's my own trauma response of needing the perfection and just being letting go and being like, all right, put whatever out there and people will either be happy or not happy. But
Yeah.
honestly, like some people just want a pattern. And so I've got 3 more semesters in my master's program, so I until I'm a psych nurse practitioner, and, my husband's recently retired, and so it's just fun to have us home all of us home with the kids now. He worked shift work, and so a lot of times, he was at work and I was home with the kids, and then he came home and I went to go do a workshop and then I'd come home. So now we're in this new sort of balance of figuring out like how to live together at home. I have worked really hard so that I can be home with my kids all the time now. And so I work at home and then I travel and teach sewing workshops, and it's just really neat that I have worked so hard to get to this point that I'm always home with my kids. And it's funny when I have to go do a workshop, they're like, "No, we don't want you to leave." And so like we're all just always together now, which
Yeah.
is amazing, like to be able to give that to my kids because I didn't have that as a kid, especially even just having a present mom, like who's always there, like, every day.
Yeah.
And so just I, I don't know, it's not lucky because 'cause we've worked hard, but it feels lucky, like because 'cause we've worked so hard to get to this point. But, I there'll be workshops on the horizon and, I'm hoping to just continue to keep sharing, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing. I've got to learn a lot from you. I know many others have as well. I at one point this summer I was like, So Yupik is my favorite follow on social media right now, just because you're you're genuine, you're funny, you share knowledge, you share culture, tradition. As an Alaskan, I feel like I didn't grow up here, and so I feel like a guest in this land anyways, and so I want to learn as much as I can about the cultures and the traditions that were in place long before, it was ever called Alaska, and to find these voices and people that are sharing that, I gravitate towards that, and I appreciate it, and it's something that I definitely wanted, um to uh to learn more about. And so it's been fun to follow you, Nikki, for sure, and I know other people enjoy it as well. Where you mentioned a couple of them, where is the best place for people to follow you right now? It sounds like TikTok might be, your newest platform that you're trying to grow. You mentioned YouTube, and then you have a website as well, correct? Like if someone wanted to schedule a workshop or reach out to you, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah. I have my website, so it's soyupic.org. There's also an old website that I had started. It's soyupic.com. So those are both me. I just had to upgrade it to make it look more professional because my other one was just like a blog where I just shared a bunch of stuff.
Sure.
And then I'm just So Yupic on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. I have X. I don't really use it anymore. And then that's just my email. It's just so you pick at Gmail. And then I have my podcast, All Things So You Pick, and that's on Apple and Spotify. We've only done 2 seasons, so there's not much there. They're actually my first season. I did a lot. I think I recorded like 20 or something. But
Awesome.
then I also have the Yupik alphabet coloring book that is on Amazon as well. So
Cool.
that's where everyone can find me. And then if you just go out and you do smoke signals, you can find me that way.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll make sure to link all those in the descriptions as well. I always ask all my guests, this show is about Alaska. It's about the unique people in Alaska with the unique experiences or expertise. Who do you have in mind that would be a cool guest to have on the show?
Ooh, yeah. So I don't know if you follow AK Mosey, Heather Duville. She's down in Southeast. She's
Yeah.
incredible. She just has been doing some stuff with Meat Eater, and she shares quite a bit. She shares a lot. And I don't know if you follow Abayuk.
No.
She inspired by Bristol Bay, so she shares a lot. She's done a lot of artwork, and she shares a lot about just the walking between two worlds of like the Western world and the traditional world, and going back to our traditional ways, sort of thing, while also having to be in a Western world and make
Mm,
money. And so, I think, maybe talking with Adam with the Fireweed Foundation because he, that's just got started up and just I think that would be interesting. Kelsey Wallace, she's the director of Alaska Native Heritage Center. And she's a young Yupik woman. Her family is from my mom's hometown family. And so she is I don't know how old she might be the youngest CEO of the Alaska Native Heritage
mm.
Center, so I don't know, but yeah, there's a
Cool.
lot of folks out there, so
I appreciate those suggestions. Yeah, some of those I am following already, and I'll look up these other ones as well. So thank you for that. Well, Nikki, thank you so much for spending your morning with me and sharing your story, all the things that you've done from where you started in Bethel and the experiences there to what's evolved over time, and a lot of effort, a lot of creativity, a lot of no's, but a lot of yeses. Your story is encouraging, and I think, like I hope with every person that I share on this podcast, would resonate with other Alaskans and people everywhere to find the good in the world, to put in that work and the effort to make it better, and to keep hope alive. Nikki Corbett, Sue Yupik, Guyana Chuck Norris. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider supporting the show by joining me on social media. Each week, I share the most thought-provoking, jaw-dropping, or just interesting moments from conversations just like you heard today. I'm currently on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at The State I Am In Podcast. Engaging with me on social media by liking, sharing, reposting, and commenting what you think is a simple and cost-free way to help other Alaskans and people everywhere find these conversations. You can also subscribe on YouTube and wherever you're listening to podcasts, whether that's Spotify, Apple, or iHeartRadio, wherever. Be sure to leave a review. These small actions really do make a huge difference. I'm committed to growing the state I'm in by sharing thoughtful, honest conversations and voices from all across Alaska. And if you or someone you know has a story that reflects Alaska beyond the postcards, gift shops, and tourist traps, I'd love to hear from you. This show exists because of the incredible Alaskans with a story to share, and I would love to take the opportunity to sit down and discuss what real life here looks like. Now, more than ever, I believe sharing the voices of our fellow Alaskans truly matters, and I will continue to do this work for as long as there are people willing to sit down and share meaningful conversations. Keep North Alaska, and thank you for joining me on The State I Am In.